right, good morning, Eden. So I'm actually very excited about doing this series. This is something I've been wanting to do for a very long time. And it's kind of a theoretical project I had in the back of my head, which is a Hasidic dictionary. I think we once spoke about this before. Hasidic dictionary, both in writing and in recording. I've always had this idea. You put a word down, and it's just like any good dictionary, it tells you how to pronounce the word, tells you what the literal translation is. It then might tell you what the contextual translation is, right? And then a paragraph to explain it.
Wasn't there one started, but they only got through Olive or something?
There is what you're referring to is and I'm not translate the word Erchen. Sefer Erchen, I think would be more like a encyclopedia. That has been done, which is an approximation of what I'm speaking of. That encyclopedia hasn't got through the letter Aleph. I have it. It's 8 volumes in my office.
How many?
8. Because you're going to Aleph, you have Ava, love, at every kind of level of love, or light, every kind of level of light. It's endless. And that encyclopedia is much more of, first of all, encyclopedias are not dictionaries. They have different functions. They're not supposed to give you meaning. They're meant to give you just overview of background and citations. But this one does much more of like teaching. So in a way, it is similar to what I want to do, but not exactly. Anyway, the reason why I want to do that is because what often happens is because this is true of any learning, but especially when it comes to Hasidus or anything of mystical, spiritual nature, where you kind of use words again and again and again and again. And in context, you kind of know what they mean. But if you don't have a proper meaning, understanding of what they actually mean, then it sometimes takes away from understanding the true depth of the subject matter. So even if you understand the subject matter at hand, but if there's one particular word that's used again and again and again that you just assume to have known, if you don't really know what it means, you kind of know what it means. And the depth of what's being taught is kind of lost. And I find this happens a lot of times with Hasidic students, even advanced Hasidic students, who, for lack of having gone to like first principles, would just accept certain words to be part of the vocabulary, without necessarily having a proper understanding of what those words mean. Now, Hasidus itself will do it sometimes. Sometimes the Hasidus will, just talk in general, and then every now and again you'll run across into a Hasidic Maimer discourse, which like zeroes in on one specific concept that's repeated all over Hasidus, and then spend 8-9 pages explaining it. And then really, whenever time that word comes up, you should be thinking about that Maimer in theory, but obviously you have to know all those memorim, all those discourses to be able to do that.
So this dictionary would
it's a hypothetical project I had in my head.
Yeah, would most likely reference the mimer, I guess.
Exactly.
If you're coming up with that word.
Precisely. So
it gives
if the dictionary were done by true Hasidic scholars, they would know all.
To go back if you want more in-depth understanding.
Correct.
Of that word.
So that's right. So if this dictionary were written by true Hasidic scholars, be able to do that for every word and say, well, here are the three discourses that discuss the definition of this word. Go check it out. And this is the definition we're coming up with based on that. Yeah. Now, the challenges are, of course, many. Like with any dictionary, defining words is very difficult to do. With Hasidus vocabulary, it becomes even more challenging because very often, as the editor of the encyclopedia used to say in Yiddish, it depends where you're speaking. Everything's in context. Whenever you describe, whenever a word is used, whenever a level is described, it's always in context. In context to what's above it, to what's below it, to what's near it. So oftentimes, one translation doesn't necessarily fit every context.
Right, we were talking about this with Malchus, right? Malchus being sometimes a giver.
Oh, yes, correct.
Receiver,
depending on the context, correct. If Malchus is a giver or a receiver, correct. Is it a projector or is it a receiver? Yes. So you have to sometimes have maybe 1, 2, 3 definitions to one word, and you'd have to know in each time which one to use. Although there's always an essential one definition that can lend itself to all 3 of them. Right? Which is the real challenge of being able to create something like this. Anyway, it's just this, it's been this idea that existed in the back of my head. And
Go
The
ahead.
series that I want to do now is a kind of like, I think, a precursor to that, just testing the idea, seeing how it comes out, seeing how it's gone. So, okay. And that's introduction one. Introduction two, the way I'd like to do it is we're going to take a word. So let's say, for example, as I posted on the group today, we're going to talk about the word nefesh. There'll probably be 2, 3, maybe days till we get through the word nefesh. And because, as I just mentioned, everything's in context. So, like I mentioned in the group, I'm going to be translating the word nefesh in contrast to something else. First, in contrast to the word neshama, nefesh in contrast to the word neshama, and then nefesh in contrast to the word yetzer. And I'll explain why I'm doing these two contrasts. So that's introduction number two. Is often, I don't know, often, but many times the definitions themselves are going to have to be given in context. I'm not to explain them, and sometimes it's going to be in contrast. Number two. The third thing I want to say is, and what I hope to do also is to use one line in the Tanya from which the definition will be extracted. And then from there, the definition will be able to be used throughout the rest of Tanya. Right? So that's why I have the books in front of us. So you can read that line together in the Hebrew, because I'll get a better sense of the definition itself, the word. And then hopefully from that phrasing and the explanation we give to the word in the context of that phrasing, you should be able to reuse it in every other context, or at least most of them, hopefully. That's the plan. And that'll also help me go in order of Tanya. I can't say I'm going to take a definition from each chapter, but hopefully somewhere approximating that. So throughout the book, there can be key concepts / key words that we're going to pick on, taken from phrase to give it its definition. Okay, so that's kind of like housekeeping to kind of give context and hopefully structure to the series. Good morning. Just in time. Very professional setup, yes. Okay, so let's go to page 4. Looking at the numbers in the bottom on page 4. Here's going to be our phrase for today, or for the next, for this word, for this concept, nefesh. And you'll see, page 4. And you'll see, actually 5, because we're looking at the Hebrew. And we'll see why in this phrase, you'll have the word nefesh both in contrast to neshama. That'll be explicit. And then in contrast to yetzer, which will be implicit, but in the context of the whole chapter, it's pretty explicit as well. So this is right at the beginning of Tanya, where, as a Tanya does, begins with a number of questions on various different passages from the Gemara and from the Zohar. And the questions that the Alter Rebbe lays down are all, in one way or another, related to the status of the Beinani. Right? Like every good Torah book, a book begins with quoting earlier sources and then asks a number of questions on those sources and then gives its explanation and dissertation and answering those questions. Okay, this should be, I guess, since we're doing this, but just as a side, Chassidus often does that. A discourse will begin with a verse, ask a question, go on an explanation, and come to an answer at the end. Now, Chassidim would refer to the question and answer as the passport, meaning it's just an entryway to get to the main point that the Mimer wants to discuss, and then the exit at the end. As if to say, if we took away the question on the pasuk at the beginning and took away the answer on the pasuk at the end, you'd still have the message that the Mimer wants to relay. It's not as if the Mimer is here because, when a person's learning Gemara and he's reading a dissertation on the Gemara, the objective of the dissertation is to explain what the Gemara meant. That's the explanation. That's the objective. When a Mimer is being taught, when the Tanya is being taught, the objective is not to explain what the Gemara meant when it said Beinani. The objective is to teach you how to live as a Beinani, right? It's not about the Gemara, right? But the messages of Chassidus are being drawn from Torah. So the passport to get into the subject is going to be whatever passage from Gemara or Chumash that the Mimer begins with and asks the question that leads us into the subject matter. So that's like the first half of the first chapter. is that passport, where he quotes a bunch of sources from the Gemara, asks a bunch of questions, which then launches into what he wants to say. Now, what does he want to say? So here's item number one. The very first thing he says, he tells us about nefesh. The very first thing. Without defining nefesh, he just tells you have one. He actually just tells you have two. That's the very first thing he tells you before even defining what it is. So let's read. If it's in page 5, the line begins, it's about a little less than halfway from the bottom of the page. The line begins with the word dar, vadar, v'chulu, u'kamoy shekasav etzadik yisad olam, a colon. Yeah, on page 5. You see it? So, ach biyar inyan. Rather, the explanation of the matter is al pi, based on mashakasav Rav Chaim Vital, that which Rav Chaim Vital being the prodigal student of the Arizal and transcriber of his teachings, Zacharin Lavracha, blessed memory, has written Beshara Kadusha in a section of his work called The Gateway of Kedusha, Uveitz Chaim Shadman Perek Beis, another citation, where the Arizal writes, the Lacholish Yisrael, for every Jewish person, Echad Tzaddik, whether he is righteous, Vechad Rasha, whether he is wicked. Yesh Shtei Neshamas, he has two neshamas. Not translating just the word, because that's going to be our subject today. His two neshamas. Ukediksiv, as the verse reads, the neshamas ani asisi. I made, says God, neshamas. The Rebbe points out that if you look earlier in that verse, it's speaking about a singular person, and yet the verse uses the term neshamas, plural, indicating that a person has more than one neshama. Minimum of plural is 2. Okay. Now says out there an interesting line, which is going to trigger our definition for today, for the first part, our first definition. Shehein, which they meaning these neshamas, are shtei nefashos. There are two nefeshs. Nefashos. You see what we just did there? Well, we know the pluralized. But what did he just add in these words? Again, everybody has two neshamas.
But yet more people.
No, everybody has shehem, which means they are. They meaning the neshamas. Everybody has two neshamas, which they are two nefashos. What did he just tell you? You have two neshamas. Oh, you don't know what a neshama is? They are two nefashos. Now you know what it is. So he's telling you, everybody has two neshamas, and they are two nefashos. So already here we see there's a contrast between the word nefesh and neshama.
One's included in the others.
One is comprised of two of the other.
What?
Then you just...
The two neshamas are two nefashos.
Oh, sorry.
Right? You have two fruit. They are two apples. Now I understand what you're talking
General
about.
to specific.
That would be the example I just gave. General fruits, specific apples. Is that what it means?
No.
And what does it mean? So what's the you have to answer the question. I'm posing it to explain what launched my thinking in what is the definition of a nefesh, in contrast to neshama. Because that's what they were saying here. You have two neshamas, and these two neshamas are, in case you weren't sure what they are, they're two nefashos.
So he's assuming you know what nefashos means, even if you're not sure what.
He also assumed maybe correct. So
No.
he definitely
On this page at least.
he definitely assumes you know what the word nefesh means. Maybe he doesn't assume you know what neshama is.
Yeah.
So he's telling you, look, you have two neshamas and they are two nefashos. Or maybe he thinks you know what both of those things mean, but he doesn't want you to get stuck in thinking it's neshama. But I want you to think it's nefesh. Either way, you got to know what those words mean. Otherwise, the sentence doesn't mean anything, and it's a foundational sentence clearly. Okay, so we already see the contrast nefesh versus neshama. Now, in this phrasing, we also have contrast of nefesh versus yetzer. Doesn't say the word yetzer, but in context it does, because as I mentioned before, this comes after quoting a series of quotes from our sages. In the quotes from our sages, it does speak about yetzer hara there. It talks about the yetzer hara the godly soul has no yetzer hara. Sorry, the tzaddik has no godly soul. Godly soul not introduced yet, but the tzaddik has no yetzer hara. King David had no yetzer hara because he killed it in his fasting. He quoted that already. The Rasha has only a yetzer hara, no yetzer tov. The animal soul, the Beinoni has both Yetzer Hara, Yetzer Tov. So he's already talked a lot about Yetzer, because he assumes you read Talmud before, so you know what Yetzer is. And now the Alter Rebbe wants to tell you, we're going to go deeper here. Two Yetzers, we know you have two Yetzers, right? A good Yetzer and a bad Yetzer. Yetzer Hara, Yetzer Tov. You've been told that since you were 3 in Cheder. And I want you to know, we're going to go deeper. What the Arizal taught you, which is you have two neshamas, which there are two nefashas. So not just two Yetzers, you have two nefashas. So we have to understand both nefesh in contrast to neshama, properly understand the sentence, and we also really have to understand nefesh in contrast to Yetzer, because Yetzer we knew we had already. That's not what the Alter was teaching me. The Alter was not teaching me that I have a Yetzer Hara and a Yetzer Tov. I knew that before I opened this book. Right? The Alter was teaching me something different, which is I have two nefashos, new revelation, based on the Arizal, which you didn't know about necessarily. You knew that you had two Yetzers, yes, but two nefashos, that's a new thing I'm introducing to you.
Is there
Okay.
is there already the pretext of the 5 levels of the soul that's understood?
Good question. We're going to get to that in a second. Yeah, very good point. Yes.
I thought he's trying to make the point that we have two neshamas and that he's using nefasha as an explanation for that.
Yes, which is why we're going to have to explain what nefesh means versus neshama. But also, the very fact that I have two neshama slash nefesh, whatever those definitions are, is being taught to me contextually in the contrast to you don't just have two Yetzers. That you know you have already. And we discussed that earlier in the sources that we quoted from the Talmud. But I want you to know, says out there, but we're going to go deeper now, because in truth, you actually have two nefesh, which are two neshamas. Or sorry, it's two neshamas, which are two nefesh. So whatever neshama slash nefesh is, it's more than just what you knew about Yetzer before. Otherwise, I'm not adding anything new to this discussion. You already knew you have two Yetzers. We need to have this whole book. And then a whole explanation for the next 6 chapters on what a nefesh is. There's 6 chapters? More. He's discussing the nefesh all the way through chapter 7. The two nefashis. What they are and what their elements are. So nefesh in contrast to neshama, and nefesh in contrast to Yetzer. Clear? Clear where we're going? Yeah?
Does he address the other? I guess.
Which one?
Well, I'm saying, do we have 2 ruachs and 2?
Okay, well, let's get to that in a second. Actually, ruach does come up a number of times. Maybe at some point we'll do definitions of those as well. It's not as relevant to the whole overview of Tanya understanding that what ruach is. Okay, you know what? Let's launch into that right now to get to the point, to get to your point that you just said, because it is true. Sorry, yes.
Very specific words and phrases.
Correct.
Not necessarily every.
I'm selecting those that I feel are necessary to understanding the overview of Tanya. And whenever you read Tanya, you should think of these definitions when those words come up. And then it'll hopefully give us a better appreciation when we learn the book. Okay, so let's first address what Meir just said. So on this line, there are a number of comments from the Rebbe and from the Tzemach Tzedek, from the third Rebbe of Chabad, upon which I'm basing my definition of the word nefesh. Now, the Rebbe does address what's the meaning of the double expression, neshamas, which they are nefashos. Why is the Rebbe doing that? What does he mean to say? And there he offers, at least in one comment, 2 explanations. Another comment I saw somewhere else gives a different explanation, which lends itself to one of the 2 explanations. So one of the, following me? Yeah, so one of the 2 explanations addresses what Meir just said, which is as follows. The Midrash tells us, and we can assume that the Alter Rebbe assumed you, the reader, knew the Midrash. As a rule, the Alter Rebbe does not. The Alter Rebbe assumes a certain level of scholarship before the reader begins. It's clear from the book. Yeah, even though the messages are and the expectations are for anybody, everybody, but it's definitely clear that he assumes a certain level of knowledge before already.
Or in the Torah also.
Assume that level of knowledge? I believe so.
What's the timeline between them? Is that the same? Simultaneous?
Couldn't say exactly, but I believe they're simultaneous. I couldn't say exactly. I don't know. There are bibliographies and those kind of things. I don't know.
Right.
Actually, the truth is you probably find that in Hayamim also, where it says like when these things are printed, random days. Okay. So the Midrash says that Chamisha Shemos Nikrula, that the soul of a Jew, the word soul is a word that we also have to find. That'll come against tomorrow. But the soul of a Jew has 5 names. Nefesh, Ruach, Neshama, Chaya, Yechida. 5 names in the Midrash gives for the soul of a Jew. And as Chassidus explains it, and as it's commonly understood, even just on basic level of understanding the Midrash, that when it says 5 names, it means 5 levels or 5 aspects or 5 components. That would be a even without a Hasidic interpretation of the Midrash. If the Midrash is giving you 5 names, it's because each of the 5 names convey something, which means they represent a level, an aspect of something. It's not just random to have names.
Something unique.
Something unique is brings to the table, right? And explains Kabbalah Hasidus that the level Nefesh is the lowest of them. Above them, Ruach. Above that, Neshama. Above that, Chaya. Above that, Yechida. And therefore, one of the comments that is made, and one of the 2 explanations for why it's repeated, says the Alter Rebbe, I'm calling it Neshama, which they are Neshamas, which they are Nefesh, Nefashes. I want you to know, not necessarily does every person get to embody the level of Neshama. That's already the 3rd level. It's a high level. But everybody definitely embodies the lower level of Nefashes. That's definitely a thing. Everybody embodies. Not everybody embodies. So the pasuk says, Hashem said, I made Neshamas in the plural. But this level of Neshama, which is the 3rd level, not necessarily that everybody get to embody and fully manifest. But Nefashes, everybody does. So Neshamas, which they are Nefashes, meaning even at the most basic level, a Jew who hasn't even achieved the level of Ruach, and certainly hasn't even achieved the level of Neshama, he's got the level of Nefesh. That for sure he's got. That is one of the things that make. That is one of the comments that it says here. Now, I didn't give a definition to what the level of Nefesh means, or level of Ruach, or level of Neshama. That will have to come tomorrow, which comes from the second explanation that Rebbe gives on this question. But in the first one, he does make the comment that you're saying, that he means Nefashes as in level Nefesh, in contrast to level Neshama, because level Neshama is of a higher order, and maybe not everybody has access to that. But Nefashes, everybody definitely got access to that. And if we have 2 Nefashes for sure, even if 2 Neshamas may be 2 beyond you. Okay, that would be 1 level. Okay, so we're at 6:57 already. Tomorrow, God willing, we'll launch into, I guess we set ourselves up. Tomorrow we'll launch into Nefesh versus Neshama. And then maybe the day after we'll do Nefesh versus Yetzer, and then we'll get to the next term and phrase. So now that you understand what we're trying to do, I actually mean it. Like, think of words and phrases that come up when you're learning Chassidus a lot, that you hear a lot, and you don't have kind of a grasp on what they are. And I'll take the challenge of doing research to give us a proper definition for these things. Okay, wonderful day, everybody.